I would like to welcome you, everyone on the line today, to the PartSource Executive Webinar Series. Today's presentation is titled Implementing and Maintaining a Quality Management System, and it will be presented by Mike Powers, Clinical Engineering Manager from ChristianaCare, and Gina Tweed, Vice President of Quality with PartSource. Before we begin, I'd like to review a few housekeeping items. First of all, you have a control panel on your screen. You can minimize or expand this control panel. It may be found at the top or side of your screen. Second, you'll be able to submit questions using the question portion of the control panel. We will try to answer as many questions as we can at the end of the presentation. If your question was not answered, we'll respond to you individually after the event. Also, if some questions might require lengthy answers, those also may be potentially answered after the event. All of the registrants will receive a copy of the presentation recording and a link to that recording after the session. This information will be sent via email using the email address with which you registered for the session. At PartSource, we now would like to introduce our moderator, Gina Tweed. Gina Tweed, again, is referred to as our Vice President of Quality, also referred to as our Chief Quality Officer. Gina has led our company to achieve the ISO 9001 certification and a quality return rate that is 7 times better than the national average. Gina's experience includes 12 years with GE and 10 years leading the OEM brands focus on supplier quality, new product introduction, and regulatory compliance. Welcome, Gina.
Hello, everyone. Before I get started, I want to share an overview of PartSource Quality Commitment, our program, and a little bit of information about our speaker today. So, at PartSource, quality is the foundation of our business. It is built into the solutions as well as our practices. We maintain our ISO certified quality management system, which is inclusive of policies, procedures, and processes, which encompasses and complies with the ISO standards, international standards, of ISO 9001. We also have another arm of our business that is ISO 13485 certified. So through our quality ranking module, we optimize the procurement process for replacing parts through a workflow solution, ensuring that our customers using our platform are selecting from only the highest quality options. Here at PartSource, we monitor, measure, and maintain quality performance and effectiveness through a sustainable supply chain, utilizing key performance indicator metrics, KPIs, for quality improvement, and this we do throughout our organization. We take a proactive approach to quality, which includes annual supplier audits for our top 200 suppliers. We audit those, not all 200 annually, but we audit a certain number each year to cover the top 200 in 3 years. We manage the performance through our quality analytics and supplier scorecard for every supplier. As a result of our efforts, we successfully have retained our ISO certification in 2019. We went through that audit with 0 findings, and we have earned the best in the market quality acceptance rate, as well as our quality return rate that is, again, 7 times better than the national average. Transitioning to our quality commitment extends to our partners as well and our customers. We are pleased to partner with like-minded customers who share a commitment to quality and embrace our responsibility to provide the data and insight needed to proactively measure and improve quality in ways that have true business impact. So, upon that note, I'd like to introduce our client speaker. Today, Mike Powers, Clinical Engineer Quality Manager from ChristianaCare, will share the story of their QMS journey. Mike Powers is responsible for implementation and maintaining the IQO 9001:2015, the ISO 9001:2015 certification and auditing process for the Clinical Engineering Department at ChristianaCare, a not-for-profit major teaching hospital headquartered in Wilmington, Delaware. ChristianaCare has 3 hospitals with more than 1,400 patient beds, a home health care service, preventative care, rehabilitation service, a network of primary physicians, and an extensive range of outpatient services. Mr. Powers, a U.S. Navy veteran, has been in the medical equipment field for over 15 years, the last 7 being with ChristianaCare and previously serving an OEM. In addition to serving many committees at ChristianaCare, Mike has helped navigate recurring Joint Commission, Nuclear Regulatory Commission, and Delaware Radiological Society, as well as ISO 9000:2015 and the FDA and CMS inspection. Mike received his MBA in Healthcare Administration Management from Wellington University. Mr. Powers, Mike, donates his time to industry groups like AMI, which we are both a part of, the Federal Cybersecurity Initiatives, such as Healthcare Sector Coordinated Council, and Cybersecurity and National Telecommunications Information Administration, and volunteers for the Pennsylvania Diversity Council, Habitat for Humanity, yay, and the American Heart Association. Mike, thank you very much for joining us, and the floor is yours.
Thank you very much. Well, hello everyone. My name is Mike Powers, and I'd like to talk to you about implementing and maintaining a quality management system here at ChristianaCare. First, a little bit about ChristianaCare. We have a message, a motto that we like to say is the ChristianaCare Way, and we always want to serve our neighbors as respectful, expert, caring partners in their health. And for us, that enables us to not just be a partner, but it encourages us to be caregivers and in some instances, servant leaders, so that we can provide good health care. The way we do that is with our core values, which are love and excellence, and those are centered around some certain behaviors. These behaviors kind of drive us to need a quality management system. For example, if we're trying to anticipate the needs of others and help with compassion and generosity, well, we believe that the needs of others are going to drive us to need a quality management system. That's part of the tea leaf reading we've been doing with some of the national things that are going on. Maybe we tell the truth with courage and empathy. Something about a quality management system requires us to stop and do some self-evaluation, and sometimes there's room for improvement. So that's that being able to tell the truth, sometimes just to yourself, with courage and empathy. Seeking new knowledge and asking for feedback and being open to change. That seems like what this whole process has been. And it could be, I don't know, maybe a dark rabbit hole to try and understand quality management systems and all of these fancy terms and words. But we've found that this has had a really measurable positive impact on our organization. And then curiously and continuously looking for ways to innovate. Well, I think we're pretty innovative as a shop, that we've implemented a quality management system that's certified to international standards. So basically, living the ChristianaCare core values and their subsequent behaviors when taken in conjunction with the current regulatory environment seems to require us to have a quality management system. Next, please. Just a little bit about us. We have a little over 12,000 caregivers, a whole lot of nurses and medical group clinicians, and a lot of volunteers. So part of the reason that I'm doing this today is ChristianaCare really thinks it's important to volunteer and give back to the community, and hopefully you guys take something away. We did have a little introduction about ChristianaCare, but if you look at a map over at the Chesapeake Bay, it's going to say ChristianaCare is halfway between Philadelphia and Baltimore. So all of that patient population between Philadelphia and Baltimore, they need to be served. So we have an acute care hospital, we have 2 other hospitals, a freestanding ED, as well as 134 physical addresses of different clinics and places where we help to provide care to the community. We do pride ourselves on being able to provide home health care down to the entire state, and our Cancer Research Institute is amazing at some of the things they've done with gene editing and how they've turned those patents over to public consumption as opposed to trying to profit from them. So all in all, ChristianaCare really tries to give back a lot. In case you haven't looked at a map, this is Delaware. We're the second smallest state, often compared to Antarctica icebergs. So if you needed to know, hey, how big is Delaware, it's probably the size of an iceberg somewhere. We do have facilities in all of these locations, here in Newark, in Wilmington just up the street, Cecil County in Maryland, Greenville, Concord is over in Pennsylvania, and Middletown down in the middle of the state. So why a quality management system? This is probably a thorny question for many people, but there seems to be an industry focus on adding quality management systems. So, you know, kind of out of self-preservation, maybe it could be legislated in such a way that if you didn't have one of these, maybe you wouldn't be allowed to work on equipment. So there's a self-preservation component to it. However, trying to continuously improve and aligning with our core values, it seems appropriate to have a quality management system. That we're trying to always improve the quality of the service that we provide, which drives us to be more selective with our vendors' choices. And our commitment to continuous improvement means that we're going to track new metrics that we didn't previously track, like repeat failures. At the core of our quality management system is increasing customer satisfaction. So we have built-in surveys that are required. And as a feedback channel, that opens other channels for us to address some long-running issues. We like to think that this allows us to describe and understand and communicate our processes better through metrics and quality objectives, and maybe even just the ability to make something of all the data that's generated these days. A lot of people in this industry are proud of the fact that they do good work. But how do you prove you do good work? So for us, the professional culture that a quality management system has brought to our organization has had some return in value with better morale, because we have better defined processes. We can solicit feedback for needed improvement, both internally and from customers. We're ability to share feedback that normally we may not have heard, and then put to that technician, wow, you did a great job. We have a fix it right the first time attitude, and maybe that isn't always pervasive, but with our quality management system, it has become for us. We've got a strategic plan And well, that allows us to manage to action all those good ideas that normally would, you go to a show and you hear about, hey, this is a great idea, and then you kind of get back to work every day and it gets onto a back burner and then it goes away and maybe it never gets implemented. So we get a strategic plan with our quality management system that allows some of those to be implemented. We have better quality, which leads to reduced variation, and that allows us to regularly obtain our objectives, which if we're always fixing things like we say we're going to fix them, then our customer satisfaction climbs and our costs are also driven down. It does allow us to recognize that in a field driven by the need for quality and safety and consistency, increasing those means that we are aligned with best practices internationally. Thinking about the patient experience, we have objective proof that we care about quality and have it checked regularly by an independent party. We are able to identify quickly problems and then correct those and put in place processes to prevent them from occurring in the future. We can highlight deficiencies and instead of being punitive, turn those into learning moments. And we now have the ability to deal with little one-off things. Hey, we'd like to do this one, and well, we can answer that with a quality answer as opposed to just yes or no and trying to hammer it down with cost. And then ability to use our processes for prove that something aligns with our annual operating plan. And that gives us leverage when we're talking to different stakeholders to say, hey, with our quality management system being aligned with our core values and our annual operating plan, is what we're being presented necessarily the best thing? Next, please. So just in case you're not familiar, there are a lot of quality management systems out there. 21 CFR, ISO 9001, 13485, you may have heard bandied about. Our friends at the Medical Imaging Technology Alliance published one recently, and DNV is often quoted as a source for quality management. So 21 CFR is the FDA's quality management system, and it says kind of effectively that manufacturers must establish and follow quality systems to help ensure that their products consistently meet applicable requirements and specifications. The quality systems for FDA-regulated products are known as current good manufacturing processes. CGMP requirements for devices in Part 820 were first authorized by Section 520 of the Federal Food, Drug, and Cosmetic Act. In 1997, they were revised to what you currently know as 21 CFR. ISO 9001 is an international organization for standardization quality management system that helps organizations ensure that they meet customers and other stakeholders' needs within statutory and regulatory environments. In comparison, ISO 13485 specifies requirements for a quality management system where an organization needs to demonstrate its ability to provide medical devices and related services that consistently meet customers' applicable regulatory requirements. Such organizations can be involved in one or more stages of the life cycle, including design and development, production, storage and distribution, installation, servicing of the medical device, and or providing associated activities like technical support maybe. So the MITA QMS standard is called NEMA MITA 2. It's a requirement for servicing of medical imaging equipment, not all of medical equipment. So it's kind of a really focused thing. And they describe the minimum quality management standards required for servicing of medical imaging devices to ensure a return to safe and effective condition for its intended use. DNV is mentioned because it's a certifying agency that requires an ISO 9000-like QMS to be in place to certify the organization. So even though they wouldn't require an organization to be ISO certified, they want those sorts of quality management practices in place. So why 9001? Well, for ChristianaCare, we wanted to look at continuous improvement, but we also evaluated the definition of risk in 13485 versus 9001. And for our practices, we wanted to look at the effect of uncertainty or an unexpected result versus impacting the safety or performance of the device or its ability to achieve market approval. And for our key performance indicators, for our key processes, the 9001 definition of risk seemed to align a lot better. We looked at the sterilization requirements for 13485, and I know everybody's wondering, well, what about your equipment? What's sterilization? And for us, sterilization is handled for the hospital by a different department. So though that's a requirement and though it's a good practice, we actually handle sterilization somewhere else, and so it doesn't really fall into the scope for our department. And then keeping in mind that 9001 has allowed us to incorporate our KPIs around project management and parts ordering and not just device service. So while it remains a standalone document, 13485 is generally harmonized with 9001, but the big difference for us is 9001 requires us to demonstrate continuous improvement, whereas 13485 requires that the certified organization demonstrate the quality system is effectively implemented and maintained. Additionally, 9001 requirements regarding customer satisfaction are absent from 13485. Next, please. So something about 13485. Well, for us, sterilization is not a clinical engineering process at ChristianaCare. That's a sterile processing process. And we also have terminal cleans done by our environmental services team. So yes, we can clean things that are found in the scope of doing work, and that is in compliance with OSHA, but we are not certifying that a particular unit is sterile. Our QMS is set up to ensure our ability to deliver on our key processes, not on our ability to install and reproducibly service one particular device. We do not develop reference materials. And as far as discussing communications with regulators, that's a function for our entire hospital and organization, and not particularly just our department. And so for us, the way we defined it, that's out of the scope for our quality management system. And then touching again on the definition of risk, it seems kind of thorny that impact the safety or performance of the device or its ability to achieve pre-market approval. That really doesn't align well with our mission of providing our key processes. Next, please. So what does all that mean? That means we wanted to get certified to ISO 9001 from 2015. Well, that's a pretty great thing. But it also means implementing a quality management system, which meant having a manual detailing all of those pieces, passing an audit, and getting internationally registered. And moreover, it means living that daily. So we're trying to think about how does that impact operations? We have to run risk evaluations regularly. It's going to change how we select our vendors. It's going to force us to segregate our parts, the known good parts from the questionable parts. It's going to have internal auditing that we have to do. And then we have to generate documents and like management reports. And we publish those to management having jurisdiction. I also chose the American Society of Quality Certification as a biomedical auditor to kind of strengthen the grasp of what all this was going to impact our organization. So for us, what does it mean? That's kind of it. So a certifying firm, there are probably more companies that can certify you to ISO than you can shake a stick at. However, They have different cost structures. Are we going to look at the size of your organization or the number of locations where you practice? Sometimes it's just hard to get on the schedule. Some people don't communicate well, and you try and reach them via email or a phone call, and they're standoffish. There are a lot of organizations out there that are very much not familiar with servicing healthcare technology. And the organization we went with had the ability to transition from our current processes into a more formal QMS. So, again, speaking with honesty and integrity, speaking the truth, we needed a little hand-holding to get from where we were to where we were going. And so we chose the organization we did because they were able to provide that as well. So, aligning all of our current processes and moving them on, and deliverables that needed to be measured, allowed us to rework some goals. So, we took what was compliant with our environment of care requirements and our own medical equipment management plan, as well as, well, our motto is we're just the solution provider for our hospital, and started off there, and then morphed it into 4 key processes that helped us through a process improvement to eliminate tasks that were solutions, but perhaps performed by another department or organization. So it allowed us to gain a level of focus. Next, please. So looking at those 4 key processes, we manage projects, whether it's an install or removal or changing software sometimes, updating things. Parts ordering. You got to have parts if you're going to be successful servicing and maintaining equipment. As part of our key process, we partner heavily with PartSource, and some of our metrics around that we're able to even answer to using documents that PartSource generates for us. So we also do preventative and reactive maintenance. Going a little more in depth on that, project management for us means that we track the project, we use Gantt charts, we set an ETA for completion, for start, and we make sure that any delays that are encountered we can account for, but those aren't delays that are going to be holding up the project because of what clinical engineering did. Parts ordering, we want to order the right part the first time. We want to encourage our technicians not to shotgun the parts ordering, which means you're going to see a high return rate. So we can actually track that. We're also getting the right parts delivered the first time, not having them show up and be not what we asked for, and also looking at the level of DOA parts, dead on arrival parts. So those are really important to us in order to be successful as an organization, and some of those metrics we're able to get from PartSource. Preventative maintenance at Christiana, you just have to have your maintenance done on time. There's no ifs, ands, or buts, really. Reactive maintenance, the thing we're looking for, though, is no repeat fixes. So every quarter we stop and we go back and we look at our installed base and we say, well, what devices have had multiple service events? And then are any of those repeat failures? Are we having to do rework, or did we get it right the first time and we have a different failure with the same device, maybe a different failure? So what happens if we don't meet these key processes? Well, if we're not compliant, kind of delve into the world of corrective actions, and we have a documented process for us to continuously improve and answer that deficiency, and then once we think we've made the improvement, to go back and measure it and make sure it was effective. Next, please. Auditing. Everybody loves an audit. So we do both internal audits and certifying audits. To become certified, we had an internal audit that brought in an inspector, went through all of our processes, went through all of our locations, met all of our team, discussed things like our training and the way we documented training, discussed a lot of other things. And then let's stop. Let's take all of that feedback and roll it into an effective QMS. Once we had done that, then we stopped and said, all right, we have fixed a lot of these issues, so let's have a certifying organization come in and certify us to ISO. So they did. They came in, they went through, and they said, do you guys have a thing here and a thing there that we need to address? But there's a process for that. And at the end of that process, we were able to be certified to ISO 9001. Now that we have continued with internal auditing. So I do audits on our QMS and our department and all of our processes quarterly to try and make sure that we don't have any drift, that there's not alarm fatigue, but for quality, that everybody is still keeping up with, let's make sure we're doing the right thing every day even though no one's looking. So kind of to make sure that we are keeping up those continuous processes, we do internal audit going forward. Now, why was this hard? Well, you can imagine that segregating parts is going to be difficult. I mean, every shop always wants to have more space, and everybody has that, oh, maybe there's a junk drawer where we have a couple of knobs that came off a defective unit, but the knobs are still good, or whatever it looks like. But being able to segregate known good from, I suspect this is good, but it probably ought to be tested before it goes back into the hands of a caregiver, or I know this thing is bad, but I want to keep that part because there's a piece of it I can take off and I'll be able to use it for a quick fix down the road. That's great about HTMs. We're very resourceful. So for us, the segregation of parts we've taken to the point where some storerooms are all under one category. So like, I know I want a whole storeroom. This is everything in here is new, it's known good, and we don't have to go through and tag each individual device and say all of these little parts in the room are excellent. I can just put a sticker on the door and say, if it made it into this room, we know it's good. And that also works with questionable places or parts that we know are defective. When the technician has a device on their workbench, it means they have to keep the work order there so that if an auditor were to walk in, if somebody else were to walk in after hours, maybe security let them in because they were out of pumps and they needed to come find one, and they got let into the shop, well, they know this one is broken. Don't wander back off with it. So keeping things labeled, keeping things segregated has allowed us to attach a level of quality to that flow of parts. A quality management system calls for work instructions. And work instructions, for all practical purposes in our shop, are departmental policies. So they need to be, ours needed to be formatted appropriately. All the headers and footers and revision levels and whatever it's updated at a point at the end, and then indexed. I'm not sure that anybody else out there has ever stopped and indexed your policies, but create an index of policies and then maintain and audit that on a day-to-day sense, and also make sure that all those policies and work instructions are reviewed annually by each member of our team. So, teaching the language of quality management systems, you can't just hang up a sign that says, ta-da, this is our quality policy. Change management has to plan, do, check, act. So to get that planning piece correct so that everyone buys in, there's a degree of, well, why are we doing this? And what does it mean for me? And what does this do to my day-to-day? And why did you have to do this to us? And all those questions, well, So we have to answer all those questions and conduct training and make sure that we tie in these improvements to our core values, and the key components of ISO 9001 drives us day to day to adhering to making sure this training happens. And then qualified vendors. We had, I think, over 4,000 vendors when we started. And how do you manage all that? That seemed like a nightmare when we first opened it up and started thinking about it. So we grandfathered in quite a few. Looked at the risk associated with each. What if they don't deliver the product or service that we have them as a vendor for? How much is that going to impact us and our ability to proceed? And then ranked and rated all those risks, mitigated where necessary, removed vendors where necessary, and that has allowed us to add this level of quality, which for us has driven in a lot of benefits. So if we want a new vendor, what do we do? Well, we've got to have a questionnaire that we've generated so that we can talk to them about their quality processes. We can then also bring in purchasing and make sure their financials are all in line, and go visit the site and check the technical documentation. But we run through that risk evaluation and determine if there's any mitigation needed, or if their risk aligns with our risk posture, and it may or may not qualify or eliminate them from our ability to use them as a vendor. So a qualified vendor list has been tricky to navigate, but I think on the next slide we'll show it's a benefit as well. Next, please. So benefit, qualified vendor list. It's almost like I wrote these slides. So how has that helped us scope our parts process and maybe impact our service contracting and service delivery? If you think about it, all of these parts that we're getting from PartSource and a few other vendors, we have to stop and make sure that the parts we're getting are not just, oh, this part was in maybe Joe's garage, and Joe's garage is going to deliver to us parts that we're going to put in medical equipment. We don't know the environment that it was exposed to. So by having qualified vendors who maintain the environment in which their parts are stored and kept and test-based, that they're all quality parts that are coming out, we're able to make sure that we're not putting defective things or questionable or stuff with a variance into our medical equipment and keeping our patients safe. With regards to service contracting and service delivery, we're able to stop and say, well, this vendor has changed their name and their scope and their purpose. So maybe they still have the person who was always our service tech, but maybe they're now more focused on another process, and we're just kind of a legacy revenue stream. So maybe we need to stop and evaluate vendors and make sure that they're still using their major focus to still be our major need. So our qualified vendor list we go through annually and make sure that we're still all aligned, that the risk assessments have all been done, that there's not any new risk that has arisen because we've chosen to use a certain vendor. Data to information. That's something I think a lot of people are trying to do. In digital age, we have copious amounts of data. I think they say 10,000 bits of data generated every minute. But with all of this data, what do you do with it? And our CEO likes to say, well, we turn our data into information. And that means not only having it there, but then engaging with it and thinking about it and coming up with the ability to do maybe statistical analysis. What's our failure rate? And turn that information into an actionable thing. And then with an actionable idea, we can say, all right, well, in our quality management system, we're going to take this actionable idea, and then we're going to assign it to somebody. Say, what do you think? And they're going to go and do maybe a return on investment, how much time and effort and cost is there going to be involved, and is it really worth doing? And if the answer comes back, sure, then, well, hey, let's jump down and do that. But then, now we have this information and this new idea, We have somebody committed to doing it. It's going to be effective. Let's implement it. Quality management system says, great, you implemented it. That's wonderful. But is it really delivering on the value that you thought it would? So that's kind of key for us, is that it forces us to come back and say, hey, it's been 4 months. Let's do a little check and just make sure that we thought this was going to deliver certain benefits, but is it really? Is this something that we should continue doing, that we should make a permanent part of our processes going forward? So being able to turn data into information into actionable items is really been beneficial. And then quarterly management reviews. I didn't really appreciate how beneficial it can be to write a quarterly management review, to be able to report out to top management what exactly we've been doing. And I've got a template that I've generated. And our template, I just walk through with our management team every week a couple of points on there. And so by the end of the quarter, we've created a report, but each one of those points that we stop and discuss and consider forces us to go through and reevaluate our whole quality management system as a management team every quarter. Every week we're touching on something. Do we need any new people? Do we need any new tools? Are there any threats on the horizon to our ability to do this? Do we need to stop and consider something that's particularly a strength of ours and find a new way to leverage it? So the quarterly management review for us has turned into a very powerful tool that keeps our focus on quality and keeps the creative juices flowing so that we can come up with those information ideas, taking our data and analyzing it in a review. And then we're able to report out with a concise document to our top management, hey, this is what we're doing. And it really gives us an effective way to prove the value that we return to our patients. That is ChristianaCare's journey to ISO 9001 certification. I think at this point, I'll kind of open it up to some questions. I'm open to hear your thoughts. Yes, ma'am.
To reiterate to all of the guests, at this time you can submit your questions using the question section on your control panel. We'll take some time to answer as many questions as we can today, and we'll give you a minute to go ahead and enter your questions. One of the questions that came through, Mike, honestly, your slide here answers. Someone asked early on in the presentation, are you registered with ISO 9001 or similar? But your slide here has given us this answer.
Yes, we are registered with International Quality Certification.
And then furthermore on that question is, which registrar certified your team? And I don't know if that's within the same gamut or not. Which registrar certified your team and when?
So IQC was the particular company that came in, or their auditor came in and performed our certification audit, and then they registered us through that certification company with ISO.
And as we wait for additional questions to come in, Mike, is there anything that comes to your mind if you were on the other side of the fence and you hadn't gone through this process? Are there any questions that come to your mind that you would be asking yourself if you hadn't already gone through the process?
Yes, there are, but I just remembered you asked when did we get certified, and it was last August. So I guess questions that people might be wondering are, would we recommend to the FDA that everybody who services medical equipment get ISO certified? And I can't really say that we should, as an industry, have everyone get ISO certified. I think that having a formal quality management system is important. I think the benefits far outweigh the cost to implement that. But I don't believe at this time that we could advise the FDA to make this a requirement for everyone, because there are critical access hospitals with very few beds, a limited budget, and this is not something that's easily done with a biomed shop of 2 people. So in order to be inclusive of every level of healthcare delivery, I would have to say that we can't require a formal process, but there should be a quality management system available for each servicer of medical equipment.
This other question came in, and it's kind of along the same lines, Mike. A gentleman asked, are there other departments in your organization, 9001 registered? How do you interact with them?
So in our hospital, there are not other departments that are ISO certified. So we have stopped and looked at their processes and looked at our processes, and we treat the other departments in our hospital as vendors and customers. So let's say I'm working on a device for one nursing area. Well, they're going to be our customer. Or let's say I'm trying to order something and it's going to be delivered through shipping and receiving. Well, shipping and receiving is our vendor at that point. So they're effectively an extension of Federal Express or UPS. So how do we go about interacting with those? We stop and we have meetings regularly, and we verify that we're both having our needs met and that they are able to say they're having their needs met. And then together, as different departments in the same organization, we verify that we're going through and meeting the organization's annual operating plan goals.
Thank you. I think that the question, individual who asked that question will find that helpful. One I found interesting that just came through, what was your biggest challenge received from your frontline staff in regards to becoming certified and any additional work that was required of them?
I suspect the biggest challenge was probably just why are we doing this? I mean, this is an extra step in every repair. It's an extra step in every servicing evolution. And what's the value that's going to deliver to me as a technician? And the way we answered that was, it seems the way that the industry is moving is towards having a quality management system. And all of the different policies and processes we had in place could be called a quality management system, but they were very informal. They allowed us to be compliant with Joint Commission. They allowed us to be compliant with a lot of different organizations, but it wasn't really codified and unified. So to be able to stop and say, we need to be able to have a quality management system to keep up with the industry and some of its demands, allows us to then say we're at the cutting edge of what's best for our patients. We're able to provide auditable, independently verified, high quality service. We're able to provide auditable, high quality repairs. And to be able to then take that information and advertise it not only to our frontline employees, but then also to the C-suite and our Joint Commission when they auditors when they come in and they say, well, how have you guys experienced being ISO certified? Well, once we started to explain it to them, our Joint Commission audit even got a little bit easier. So those benefits allowed us to sell it much more to those frontline employees.
The next question, would you recommend to the FDA that they require all suppliers become ISO certified? And I'll serve that one both to you and Gina, given your guys' background on ISO.
So I'll go first and say I wouldn't require it from the FDA or even recommend it to the FDA, but I know for my organization, I want to have suppliers that have a formal quality management system, and I prefer they have ISO as that quality management system. So for us, as ChristianaCare Clinical Engineering, we need that to be able to do business with you as a vendor. So I would say I wouldn't require it for everybody on a national level from the FDA. My goodness, this is the way it is, because there are hospitals who have a different patient population, who have a different ability to purchase new things every time than we do. But I would say that for our organization, it's something that we stick by. Gina?
Yeah. Can you hear me, Mike?
I can.
Okay. Awesome. From parts one, the FDA will not require all suppliers to be FDA certified or ISO certified out there, but what we do hope to see is that they require them to absolutely have a quality management system in place to help drive the quality of the products that they produce. Now, here at PartSource, we do push for our suppliers to be ISO certified, either 9001 or 13485, depending on the types of products that they deliver. We find that to be very valuable, and in going out and auditing these suppliers and looking at their processes, it helps to ensure that we're going to get quality products from those suppliers if they are at least ISO certified. So it's something that we don't absolutely require, but we are quickly moving in that direction to require our suppliers to be ISO certified.
Another question along the same lines, serving this one to both of you guys. How does being 9001 certified impact interaction with manufacturers who may not follow 9001 directly? And then they add 21 CFR comes close.
So 21 CFR does come close. I suppose I don't encounter a lot of manufacturers who are not ISO certified. I would have to really strain to think about that. So maybe that would be one it'd be better be answered by an email back to the question asker.
Okay. And if Gina, would you feel the same?
Well, I think it is a detailed answer, but real quick, one of the things that you look at, if they're not ISO certified, there is at least an expectation that they have good manufacturing practices in place. So they don't have to be ISO certified, but they have to have good manufacturing practices in place. And those good manufacturing practices have an alignment with the 21 CFR 820 as well. So if you've got a supplier that's not ISO certified, but they employ good manufacturing practices, current good manufacturing practices, there is at least a level of assurance that they at least are thinking about quality and implementing it in their processes.
Funny story about that. We had one vendor that we wanted to work with. I wanted to buy parts from them, and I wanted to be able to work on their device myself. And it was a device that we had familiarity with. And they actually had to come back and tell us, well, our quality management system doesn't have the ability baked in for us to sell you parts. So we actually had to work through with that vendor over about half a year. How do we, as a in-house service delivery organization, how do we go about becoming a group that can work on your equipment so that we can help you comply with your own quality management system? So it's been interesting. It's gone both ways, that sometimes it's allowed us to work on equipment that perhaps maybe otherwise we wouldn't have. And it's because of our dedication to quality and understanding their quality management system and how all that dovetails together.
Yeah.
Mike, a question came in asking about your supplier quality reviews. And I guess this also could be to PartSource. But they asked how many suppliers are under your formal QMS program, how frequently are they reviewed, and you kind of touched on this earlier, and it said, and Gina, you did in your introduction, saying that PartSource has hundreds of suppliers, and what criteria do we as PartSource, a provider of the parts and service, what criteria do we use to limit the number of suppliers to the full QMS review?
Okay, Mike, I'll take this right quick. Here at PartSource, we have our quality ranking module. It's our internal processes and system that we have where I look at every single supplier and see how do they rank from a quality perspective, especially looking at their quality return rate. Here at PartSource, we have thousands of suppliers, upward of 4,000 or 5,000 suppliers. So we look at them on a monthly basis. I look at their supplier performance, their scorecards, and we select, because a lot of the purchase comes from the top 200 suppliers, so I'm managing those guys more so on a weekly basis, and all the rest of the suppliers on a monthly basis. And then if I see any drastic change in a supplier, one, it triggers, if I haven't audited that supplier, it triggers notification that I need to look more deeply at that supplier's QMS. I need to also assign a SCAR to a supplier if I see drastic changes in the quality level that they produce. But we manage our suppliers, if it's top 200, really on a weekly basis, and if all the rest of the suppliers on a monthly basis via our quality ranking module that we use to look at suppliers. And from an auditing perspective, like I said, we select the top 200 and go out and we audit those suppliers every year. We look at a segment of the suppliers and audit.
Thank you, Gina. For ChristianaCare, we do go through and reevaluate the risk of continuing to do business with each of our suppliers, and part of that is looking at delivery of services and parts. So for us, that's done quarterly, and we go through and reevaluate everyone, and it has allowed us to trim down the number of individual companies that we're doing business with.
Thank you both for that. We do have several unanswered questions, but I would just notice we're at the top of the hour, so to be respectful of everyone's time commitment, we will go ahead and close out the session. If your question was not answered live, we will be responding to you via email. Thankfully, the webinar system does record that information of who asked the question, as long as you didn't ask anonymously. Mike also provided a few questions. Again, if he were on the other side, some of the things he might be thinking about. So that will be included in your follow-up. So you can think about that if you're planning to implement a QMS system. And I just wanted to follow up to let everyone know we do have a March webinar from our executive webinar series. It's going to be featuring Kayla Hepler and talking about standardizing contracts within the supply chain, and that'll be on March 27th at 1 p.m. Eastern. Registration information will be included on your follow-up email if you'd like to join us for that session. Again, I'd like to thank Mike and Gina for their time, all of you for joining us for the webinar today. And as a reminder, you'll receive a follow-up email that will include link to the presentation recording that should come in about 2 to 3 business days. So at this time, the webinar has ended. Thank you for attending, and I hope you have a wonderful day.